Many view Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 as speaking of the enigmatic sons of God who came to the daughters of men and bore mighty offspring. Who were these beings? Were they fallen angels, divine entities, or something entirely different? Join us as we unravel one of the Bible's most debated mysteries and explore how this ancient phrase shapes our understanding of the spiritual realm. Before we continue, please remember to subscribe, like, and share. Genesis chapter 6 recorded the intermarriage between the sons of God and daughters of men. Genesis chapter 6 verse 1 reads, "Now it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose." Then verse 4 reads, "There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown." These verses have been given various interpretations by using both biblical and extra-biblical texts and materials. Some interpreters see the children of God as descendants of Seth, as proposed by Matthew Henry. The sons of God, that is, the professors of religion, who were called by the name of the Lord and called upon that name, married the daughters of men, that is, those that were profane and strangers to God and godliness. The posterity of Seth did not keep by themselves as they ought to have done, both for the preservation of their own purity and in detestation of the apostasy. They intermingled themselves with the excommunicated race of Cain. They took them wives of all that they chose. Matthew Henry Bible Commentary, complete, Genesis chapter 6 verses 1 and 2. In addition, the sons of God are seen as the angels, as proposed by John W. Myler, who states that the giants of Genesis chapter 6 were genetically engineered hybrids of humans and fallen angels. These giants were called Nephilim. This implies that they had a physical appearance. David Guzik states that sons of God in Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 clearly refer to angels, as had been used in 3 other verses in the Old Testament. This view has been supported by the Septuagint translators, who translate the words sons of God as angels, not human descendants of Seth. Thirdly, there is the understanding of the sons of God being inhabitants from other worlds, that is, aliens. As an example, Zecharia Sitchin believed that the Nephilim were the offspring of extraterrestrials and humans, resulting from crossbreeding between the two species. The Hebrew word Nephilim can be translated as the fallen ones because it comes from the Hebrew word naphal, which means to fall. Sitchin opined that the ancient Sumerian texts recorded the word Anunnaki, which has a similar meaning to that of the word Nephilim, which is peoples who come to earth. According to Sitchin and ancient Sumerian texts, Anunnaki were extraterrestrials who came from a planet called Nibiru. Extra-biblical materials can be helpful in understanding difficult passages in the Bible. However, those backgrounds should not determine the interpretation of a passage if in the process we sacrifice the principle that the Bible is its own interpreter. We should begin with the biblical text itself. A study of the phrase sons of God in the Old Testament reveals that it is used to designate the Israelite king, as seen in Psalms chapter 2 verse 7 and 2 Samuel chapter 7 verse 14. Angels, as in Job chapter 38 verse 7, and heavenly beings, members of the divine council, as in Job chapters 1 verse 6 and 2 verse 1. In a very special way, the Israelites are called sons or children of God. Israel is the firstborn son of God, as stated in Exodus chapter 4 verses 22 and 23. In some of the royal psalms, the inauguration of a king is compared to birth from God, such as in Psalms chapter 2 verse 7 and Psalms 109 verse 3. In Psalm 89 verse 26, the king can call out to God as Father because he is God's firstborn. In Job chapter 38 verses 4 to 7 it states, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding, who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" We see in Job chapter 38 verses 1 to 7 that it provides a description of the creation week. The morning stars, or sons of God, were present to witness this event when it took place. It bears noting that the expressions morning stars and sons of God are placed in synonymous parallelism. That is to say, the morning stars and the sons of God are the same group. It is absolutely clear that this group of beings already existed when God created this world. Revelation chapter 12 verses 3 and 9 clearly identifies the stars as angels. Hence, we see the angels in this sense as the sons of God. In Job chapter 1 verse 6, a meeting took place in heaven. The verse reads, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them." In attendance at this meeting are sons of God as well as Satan himself. Satan says that he has come from the earth. The sons of God do not always dwell in the presence of God. They came to present themselves on a certain day. This contrasts with another verse where we are told that Job offered sacrifices always, as in Job chapter 1 verse 7. Satan came among the sons of God. Notice that the text does not say that he came with them. Evidently, Satan claimed the right to belong to this select group. What made him feel like he had the right to appear among this select group? Satan came representing a planet, the earth. Where, then, must the other sons of God have come from? Is it just possible that they also came from other planets? Job chapter 2 verses 1 and 2 mentions a second meeting that was held in heaven to examine the case of Job. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it." The same remarks we shared on Job chapter 1 verses 6 and 7 apply to Job chapter 2 verses 1 and 2. The word again in verse 1 is important. If the sons of God came again, then they must have left the presence of God and gone back to where they came from for the first meeting. The sons of God were there representing their unfallen worlds in God's universe. Satan was there to represent the earth. Adam had yielded his dominion of the earth to Satan when he sinned. In the Gospel of Luke, the genealogy of Jesus is traced all the way back to Adam. Notice what Luke says about this lineage: the son of Enos, which was the son of Seth, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God. Luke chapter 3 verse 38. Thus, one definition for sons of God is those beings God himself created to have dominion over the worlds he made. These beings were not born, but were created directly by God. On the other hand, in Exodus chapter 4 verses 22 to 23, Moses' audience, Israel, is identified by God as my son, my firstborn. These sons of God were heading to the promised land. Another meaning of sons of God refers to human beings who have been recreated by God's Spirit. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. Romans chapter 8 verse 14. Matthew chapter 5 verse 9 adds, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." Here Jesus is obviously referring to human beings, but not just any human beings. These are peacemakers, the righteous children of God. In no way should this be construed to refer to angels or aliens. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. John chapter 1 verse 12. Notice that there were those who were not sons of God, but that through receiving him became sons of God. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. Romans chapter 8 verse 14. It should be mentioned that sons of God doesn't mean just males. Many Bible translations render the phrase children of God. Galatians chapter 3 verse 26 says, "For ye are all the children of God by faith in Christ Jesus. It is by faith that a man or woman becomes a child of God." And of course, some verses do mention God's adopted sons and daughters. "Even to them I will give in my house and within my walls a place and a name better than that of sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off." Isaiah chapter 56 verse 5. The inescapable conclusion from these verses and others is that the sons of God in Genesis chapter 6 can refer to the righteous children of God. With respect to the nature of angels, 3 times in the Gospels, Jesus revealed that angels do not marry. One instance mentions, "For in the resurrection they do not marry, nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven." Matthew chapter 22, verse 30. The word marry in the three texts use the Greek word gameo, which means to marry a wife, or it can also be interpreted as sexual intercourse. Therefore, this verse is a clear statement that the righteous people who will be raised at the coming of Christ will not marry nor are given in marriage, because they are like the angels in heaven. In other words, the angels in heaven are not married nor given in a marriage. Furthermore, the words in heaven do not merely denote a place where they cannot perform marriages. The words in heaven can also be interpreted as the nature of heaven. Thus, the nature of not marrying or given into marriage is heavenly, or the culture of heaven. Therefore, an angel will keep that original nature, whether fallen or unfallen. Angels are spirit beings. They are not flesh, as indicated by Psalm 104, verse 4, which states, "Who maketh his angels spirits?" They are all around us now, but we cannot see them. They generally remain in their spiritual form and have very little physical integration in our world. The holy ones are here to minister for them, who shall be heirs of salvation, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 14. Even if they wanted to marry and have babies, they couldn't. They don't have human DNA. Thus, it doesn't make any practical sense to believe that our passage in Genesis refers to the marriage of angels, fallen or holy, to humans. Angels are not born, they are created. If God wanted more angels, he wouldn't need to marry them off to humans or other angels to reproduce. He could create them from scratch. Speaking of Lucifer, God said, "The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared for you on the day you were created." Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 13. Hence, angels do not procreate for reproduction. Marriage is a uniquely human institution reserved for mankind. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven, Matthew chapter 22, verse 30. Mark and Luke suggest the same thing. Neither can they die anymore, for they are equal unto the angels and are the children of God. Luke chapter 20, verse 36. Some translations render it sons of God. Notice here that Jesus makes a distinction between angels and sons of God. They are classified separately, which means they're not the same thing. The events in Genesis chapter 6 have two statements that are used to describe the relationship between the sons of God and daughters of men. In verse 2 it says that the sons of God took them wives, and verse 4 says that the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. Each statement has a different meaning. The statement of took them wives appears 41 times in the Old Testament, and all instances mean a legal marriage relationship between a man and a woman. And a sexual relationship that will happen also takes place on an ongoing basis as they continue together in the marriage relationship. Not a sexual relationship that occurs once or a few times, as happens in sexual relationships that are not based on a legal marriage. The phrase come in unto has two meanings, go to or draw near. The expression come in unto in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, appears 21 times in the Old Testament, and all the instances mean both a sexual intercourse carried out lawfully in a marriage relationship between husband and wife, as well as a meaningful relationship carried out illegally in adultery or fornication. This relationship is not limited to men and women, but also among the same gender, as well as man and an animal. By itself, the phrase does not address the fact of marriage as being the basis of sexual relationship. However, when combined with the phrase take a wife, it means that the sexual relationship is based on the legal marriage relationship between a husband and a wife. It appears that the relationship of the sons of God and daughters of men, with the phrases taking a wife and come in unto, means that the sexual intercourse in that relationship was based on a legal marriage between a husband and a wife. Further, the intermarriage in Genesis chapter 6 between the sons of God and daughters results in God's judgment on the sins of mankind. This judgment was not addressed to the angels because God says, "I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth," both man and beast, Genesis chapter 6, verse 7. This verse clearly refers to human beings that God has created, not the angels that he has created. This concept is further clarified with the presence of the statement all flesh in Genesis chapter 6, verse 13. Angels are spirit beings formed from fire and wind, spirit as stated in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 7 and Psalm 104, verse 4, and not of flesh. Therefore, they are not included in the all flesh in Genesis chapter 6, verse 13. Another concept that does not agree with the theory of the sons of God in Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 as the angels is the result of the descendants of the marriage. The offspring are not mentioned as semi-divine creatures or semi-angelic beings. In the verse it states that they bear children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. The woman gave birth to the mighty men, in other words, a human, not supernatural beings, semi-divine or semi-angels. The phrase men of renown means men of reputation and describes a person with a good character, as seen in 1 Chronicles chapter 12 verse 30, and also individuals who use their influence for evil purposes, as in Numbers chapter 16 verses 2 and 3 and 1 Chronicles chapter 5 verses 24 and 25. Here the context seems to require a negative interpretation of that terminology. Meanwhile, there is a reference to the Nephilim who were on the earth in those days, but the Hebrew text does not say that they were the descendants of the intermarriages, although some translations make that suggestion. The sentence, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, seems to be a parenthetical statement, which is clauses or phrases used in sentences that contain secondary information that is not required to complete an independent clause or main clause. Nephilim is a Hebrew word whose meaning is not clear, and translators do not provide any English equivalent. In Numbers chapter 13 verse 33, this term designates giants. The antediluvian Nephilim were destroyed by the flood, but later the term was used to refer to people of unusual height and violence who inhabited the land of Canaan. With respect to any extraterrestrial beings or aliens, Zecharia Sitchin states that the expression Nephilim and people of the Shem actually means people who came from a rocket ship. However, the word Shem in all the Bible-related dictionaries and commentaries never translates or interprets the word as a rocket ship. Additionally, Genesis chapter 6 never speaks of people on earth receiving visitors from another planet or world. Instead, Genesis 6 clearly tells the story of happenings between man and man, not angels or inhabitants of other worlds. Genesis chapter 5 verse 4 states that Adam was still producing sons and daughters after the birth of Cain and Seth. Notably, Genesis only lists the genealogy of Cain and the genealogy of Seth, but not that of the other children of Adam. Genesis chapter 4 verses 17 to 24 outline the lineage of Cain, while Genesis chapter 4 verse 25 to chapter 5 verse 32 shows the lineage of Adam, not through Cain, but through Seth. Here we find that humans at that time were divided into two major groups, namely the descendants of Cain and the descendants of Seth. Therefore, we see two major groups of human beings that are being highlighted, and not humans and supernatural beings. It is of note that Genesis is the book about two seeds, Cain and Abel, sons of God and daughters of men, Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, etc. In every one of these cases, both seeds are human. Therefore, a fundamental difference between Seth and the descendants of Cain is seen in the biblical accounts of their lives. In Genesis chapters 4 and 5, the Bible only recorded the testimonies of the lineages of the families of Cain and Seth of all the children of Adam. The second generation of Adam from the descendants of Cain is Enoch. Cain initiated the establishment of the first city in the world, as mentioned in Genesis chapter 4 verse 17. Most likely he built a city as a place of refuge for him and his family. In other words, Cain could rely on the protection of the city he founded. It is in direct contrast with the second generation of Adam from the family of Seth. The record of Enos, the son of Seth, begins with calling on the name of God as stated in Genesis chapter 4 verse 26. In other words, the descendants of Seth show us that they depend on God by calling on his name. When comparing the seventh generation from Adam of both Cain and Seth, we see clear distinctions. From the seventh generation through Cain's lineage came Lamech. He was the first one recorded in the Bible to practice polygamy, and he was also vindictive to those who hurt him as much as 77-fold, according to Genesis chapter 4, verses 19 and 24. In other words, Lamech followed his will or his desires as a carnal man. This is in direct contrast with the seventh generation of Adam from the family of Seth. The Bible records that from the seventh generation Enoch walked with God and he ascended to God, as mentioned in Genesis chapter 5 verse 24. Hence Enoch sought and followed the will of God, so that he was chosen by God. Recall, for as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God, as stated in Romans chapter 8 verse 14. Matthew chapter 5 verse 9 states, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." Therefore, the notion of the sons of God being those from the lineage of Seth would fit with the biblical concept. Meanwhile, those from the lineage of Cain would fit the concept of the daughters of men being the opposite of the sons of God, with their rebellion against that which is right and their dependence on self rather than God. Notably, at this time in Bible history, when man's genetic vitality was at its peak, the practice of marrying close family members was not forbidden. Abraham married his half-sister, as mentioned in Genesis chapter 20 verse 2. Isaac married his cousin. It was not until the time of Moses that marrying a sister was forbidden, likely because of the greater risk of genetic weakness and health complications with the offspring, as stated in Deuteronomy chapter 27 verse 22. Here, before the flood, we have the descendants of Cain living in cities and the descendants of Seth living in the country. As long as they remained separate, the sons of God remained pure in their religious beliefs and practices. Yet eventually they began to intermingle. Maybe the sons of God needed supplies that could be more easily obtained in the cities where the daughters of men resided. The sons of God and daughters of men became familiar with each other, even friendly. Whatever the case, soon the godly sons of Seth, or sons of God, captivated by the beautiful daughters of Cain, began to marry these daughters of men, the descendants of Cain. However, the book of Genesis also tells us that marriage between believers and unbelievers is not pleasing to God. In Genesis chapter 24, verses 3 to 4, Abraham asked Eliezer to take an oath that he will not take a woman from Canaan to be a wife for Isaac. In chapters 26, verses 34 to 35, when Esau took Hittites to be his wives, it brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. In the other Old Testament books, this concept also emerges. Both in the Pentateuch, like Leviticus chapter 18, verses 1 to 30, Numbers chapter 12, verse 1, Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 1 to 4, and in other books like Ezra chapter 9, verses 1 to 15, Judges chapter 14, verses 1 to 3. The same concept also appears in the New Testament. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion hath light with darkness, and what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel, and what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God. As God hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing. And I will receive you, and will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty. 2 Corinthians 6, 14-18. Meanwhile, in the Old Testament, the word son was the Hebrew words, ben, and yeld. The word ben appears 4,902 times in the Bible. In the King James Version, ben is translated as offspring, child, or children. However, it is also translated as residents, nation, or people of a particular region or nation. In addition, it is translated with an adjective attached as powerful, alien, valiant, and others. While the word yelt appears 90 times in the Bible, and the translation can be classified into 3 categories, 74 times as a child or children, both men and women, 6 times as sons or boys, and 10 times as young men or youth. Additionally, the word ben is not only used to describe the offspring of parents, but also represents the origin or residence, and also the nature he has. The word sons in the Bible is not only to be understood as the offspring of parents, both men and women, but also as the embodiment of nature, characterization, or disposition. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, the Hebrew word that was used was ben, which can be interpreted as a descendant, but also can be interpreted as a manifestation of nature, characterization, or disposition. Some occurrences of the word sons or child as the embodiment of nature, characterization or disposition, among others, are children of the kingdom, Matthew 13:38, children of resurrection, Luke 20:34, children of light, John 12:36, the children of disobedience, Ephesians 2:2, children of the day, 1 Thessalonians 5:5, sons of thunder, Mark 3:17, the children of hell, Matthew 23:15. 7 occurrences of the word son or child. As noted, these expressions do not describe the word son or child as a descendant, but describe the word son or child as the embodiment of nature, characterization or disposition. Based on this concept, the understanding that the phrase sons of God does not merely describe the child who is offspring of God, but describes the expression children who embodies the nature and characterization or disposition similar to God. Human beings as children of God should reflect the nature or character of God. Some attributes of God that should be realized by men as his children are already mentioned in the biblical requirements to be called the sons or children of God. Consequently, this gives us an understanding that to be called children of God, man must be a manifestation of the nature, disposition, and the character of God in this world. In summary, contextual and linguistic analysis indicates that the best interpretation for the intermarriage that occurred in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, would be that the sons of God are the descendants of Seth and the daughters of men are the descendants of Cain. This appears to be the one suggested by Scripture itself, rather than any other view. It can be concluded that human beings as the sons of God are not seen merely in terms of the physical attributes, but from the inner aspect as well. The phrase sons is not just a descendant of someone, but the embodiment of the nature, character, or disposition of a person. Thus, as sons or children of God, human beings should reflect the nature of God in all aspects of life. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please remember to subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next video.